Get! What the? Kai jolted awake, every nerve ending screaming cold before anything else registered. Bone deep, invasive cold that his high-spec thermal sleeping bag should have laughed at. Except it wasn't, and something was in it with him. Something smooth, cool, and definitely not standard issue survival gear. He flailed, tangled in the slick material, adrenaline dumping ice water into his veins to compete with the chill. A muffled sound, a low hum vibrated against his ribs, panic clawed at his throat. He ripped at the zipper, fingers numb and clumsy, the small enclosed space of the emergency shelter suddenly feeling like a coffin. The zip screeched downwards, letting in a sliver of the faint emergency lighting, and revealing the source of the intrusion. Her face was inches from his, large, impossibly dark eyes blinked slowly, reflecting the dim red light. Her skin wasn't skin, not exactly. It was overlaid with minute, iridescent scales that shifted like liquid mercury even in the near darkness, catching the light in fleeting patterns of teal and violet, two delicate twitching tendrils, like bioluminescent feelers, unfurled from her temples. She wasn't breathing like he was, instead, a faint, internal blue-green glow pulse, rhythmically beneath the surface near her collarbone, and she was cold. Her presence was the source of the unnatural chill radiating through the bag. She tilted her head, the movement fluid, hypnotic. "You make distressed noises," she observed. Her voice was a low, melodic hum, layered with resonant undertones that vibrated in Kai's teeth. Distressed? He was borderline hysterical. What are you? And why are you in my sleeping bag?" His voice was a ragged croak. She shifted slightly, the cool slide of her scaled flank against his thermal undershirt making him jerk violently. "I detected warmth," she stated, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. "This containment field," she tapped the sleeping bag material with a long finger tipped with a pearlescent pad, "concentrates it. Efficient." Her gaze swept over his face, curious, analytical. "Your surface temperature is significantly higher than ambient." "Fascinating." Kai stared, utterly dumbfounded. He was crash-landed on some uncharted jungle hellhole planetoid, designated Xylos 7. His ship, the Rusty Bucket, currently a heap of smoking scrap somewhere outside this pathetic inflatable shelter. And he wakes up spooning, "This? Fascinating? Get out." He tried to shove her, but it was like pushing polished stone. She didn't budge, her grip surprisingly strong where her hand rested lightly on his hip. "Negative," she replied calmly. "Thermoregulation is suboptimal outside the concentration field." Her dark eyes fixed on his mouth as he opened it to argue again. "Your vocalizations are sharp, unpleasant harmonics." He gritted his teeth. "My harmonics are going to get a lot sharper if you don't remove yourself from my personal space." A flicker of something, amusement, annoyance, shifted the color of her scales to a deeper indigo. Personal space? The concept seemed alien to her. Her tendrils twitched again, brushing against his cheek. It felt like cool silk combined with a faint static charge. He flinched back. "Yes, mine, not yours. Get out." He finally managed to wriggle partly away, the sudden loss of her cool weight paradoxically making him feel colder. She watched him, head tilted again. "You radiate strongly. Is this distress, typical for your species upon proximity?" Before he could formulate a suitably scathing reply, a screech echoed from outside the shelter, followed by a heavy thud against the inflatable wall. They both froze. Lyra's glow intensified, shifting to a wary yellow-green. Her tendrils stiffened, pointing towards the sound. "Predator," she murmured, her voice losing its melodic quality, becoming flat, alert. "Large mass, searching. Great, just great." Stranded, freezing, sharing his last refuge with a glowing, cold-blooded alien popsicle who talked like a user manual and now hunted by whatever the hell lived out there. He zipped the bag back up halfway, suddenly less concerned about proximity and more about shared body heat being better than none if the shelter failed. Lyra didn't protest, simply settled back against him, her cool presence less jarring now, almost a strange comfort against the external threat. Her rhythmic, internal pulse seemed to thrum against his back. "What are you?" he whispered, the fight draining out of him, replaced by weary. She turned her head slightly, her dark eyes finding his in the dimness. I am Lyra of the Cathar. Her gaze held his. And you, she added, a new considering note in her voice, are intriguingly warm. The predator eventually moved on, its heavy, scuffling sounds fading into the dense, dripping humidity of the alien jungle outside. Silence descended, thick and tense, broken only by the frantic thrumming of Kai's own heart and the steady, low pulse emanating from Lyra beside him. He hadn't moved, she hadn't either. The forced intimacy of the sleeping bag was now a grim necessity against the pervasive chill that seeped through the shelter walls. Xylo 7 apparently had a nightlife that involved things trying to eat inflatable habitats. Fantastic! Okay, Kai finally breathed out, the air misting faintly. Okay, truce, for now. We need to figure out what we do when the suns come up. Lyra shifted, angling herself slightly so she could see him better. Her glow remained a low, watchful yellow-green. Assess resources, locate stable shelter, avoid being consumed. Her pragmatism was unnerving. Right. Simple. He scrubbed a hand over his face. My ship's comms are fried. Distress beacon went dead on impact. We're on our own. He glanced at her. You? Any fancy Cathar spaceship hiding behind a bush? A faint ripple of silver chased across her scales. My transport was compromised. Before your vessel's atmospheric disruption. Compromised. That could mean anything. Shot down? Captured and escaped? So, you're stranded too. Correct, she confirmed. My survival probability increased upon detecting your thermal signature. Lucky me, Kai muttered, though he had to admit, having someone else, even someone this bizarre, was marginally better than facing this alone. Marginally. When the twin suns of Xylo 7 finally began to pierce the thick canopy, casting dappled, sickly green light through the shelter's translucent panels, the temperature barely rose. It was a damp, cool world. Kai cautiously unzipped the bag fully, the rush of cooler air making him shiver. Lyra emerged fluidly, unfolding herself with an alien grace. Standing, she was taller than he'd expected, maybe 6 feet, lean and sculpted. Her iridescent scales covered her entire body, shifting through blues, greens, and violets with the changing light, and he suspected her mood. A long, prehensile tail, tipped with delicate, fin-like fronds that glowed faintly, swished gently behind her, maintaining her balance. She wore no clothes, seemingly needing none, her scales forming intricate, almost decorative patterns across her torso and limb. Kai quickly looked away, pulling on his own heavier jacket and pants, feeling suddenly overdressed and ridiculously mammalian. Right, he said, trying to regain some semblance of control. Let's check the wreckage, see if anything's salvageable. He activated the shelter's external sensors. Patchy image, Eid showed the rusty bucket nose down in a thicket of pulsating purple flora about 50 meters away. Steam still curled from the ruptured engine housing. Lyra followed him out, her bare feet making no sound on the mossy ground. Her head swiveled constantly, tendrils twitching, sampling the air. The jungle was alive. Overwhelmingly so. Strange chirps, clicks, and deep guttural calls echoed through the towering, fungal-looking trees. Huge bioluminescent insects drifted lazily through the humid air. The smell was thick, loamy, and sweet with a cloying undertone of decay. This environment is hostile, Lyra observed, her tail twitching faster. High density of predatory biosigns. No kidding, Kai grunted, drawing his battered pulse pistol. Standard procedure on unknown worlds. Pointy end towards anything that moves. They picked their way through the undergrowth, Lyra moving with an unnerving silence and speed, her iridescent skin sometimes blending uncannily with the dappled light. Kai felt clumsy and loud beside her. Reaching the ship was demoralizing. It was worse than he'd thought. The cockpit was smashed, the cargo hold breached, his emergency supplies, water purifier, med kit, concentrated rations were scattered and mostly ruined by impact and leaking engine coolant. Scrap, he muttered, kicking a bent piece of hull plating. Total scrap. Lyra, however, was examining the pulsating purple plants near the wreckage. She reached out a long-fingered hand, her touchpads glowing faintly as she brushed against a thick stalk. The plant recoiled slightly, then seemed to relax. Its internal luminescence brightened. Edible? Kai asked hopefully. Lyra withdrew her hand. Nutrient-rich fluid sac. Requires careful extraction, mild neuroaffective properties for non-cathar physiology. So, it'll make me high? Possibly disorienting. Or fatal. Dosage is critical. She straightened up, her dark eyes scanning the jungle canopy. Water source nearby. Westward flow signature. Kai stared at her. You can smell water? Detect moisture particulate gradients and associated life forms, she corrected. More efficient than auditory tracking, right? Super alien senses could be useful, could be terrifying. He managed to salvage a mostly intact hydropack, a vibro knife, and a secondary emergency beacon, though its power cell was worryingly low. As he stuffed them into his pack, he felt eyes on him. Lyra was watching, her head tilted in that curious way again. Scales had shifted to a softer lavender hue. Your movements are inefficient, she commented. Jerky, discontinuous. Yeah, well, I don't have liquid mercury for skin or a glow-in-the-dark tail. He cinched the pack tight. Let's go find that water, and maybe somewhere less exposed. Lyra started walking westward without waiting, her tail tracing patterns in the air. Kai hurried after her, pulse pistol still ready. He had a feeling inefficient was going to be the least of his problems with her around. The stable shelter Lyra located wasn't exactly a five-star resort. It was a crumbling ruin, half swallowed by the jungle, massive black stone blocks covered in intricate carvings that seemed to writhe in the periphery of his vision. It looked ancient, possibly predating whatever wiped out the last survey team here decades ago. Inside, it was damp and smelled of moss and old decay, but it offered solid walls and a defensible entrance. Better than the inflatable tent, anyway. Kai managed to get a small plasma fire going using the salvaged igniter from his pack, chasing away some of the gloom and, more importantly, the chill. Lyra settled near the entrance, not close to the fire, but positioned where she could observe both the interior and the jungle outside. She moved with a stillness that was unnerving, sometimes seeming like just another shadow, until her scales caught the firelight in a cascade of shifting color. Kai busied himself sorting their meager supplies. 2 days' worth of water if they rationed, maybe 3 days of nutrient paste if he ignored the expiration date. The salvage beacon was useless without a significant power source. They were well and truly stuck. He glanced over at Lyra. She was running a finger along one of the carved walls, her touchpads glowing faintly, as if reading the stone itself. Her tendrils twitched rhythmically. Find anything interesting? He asked, mostly to break the silence. She turned her head, her dark eyes seeming to absorb the firelight. Echoes, she murmured. Faint structural resonance. This place was significant. A nexus. A nexus for what? Energy, transit, sustenance. She tilted her head. Conflict. Great. Ancient alien battleground. Just what they needed. He tossed another piece of dried fungal wood onto the fire. It spat sparks. Lyra watched the flames, her expression unreadable. You generate significant thermal energy, she observed again. Is this constant for your species? Mostly. We call it being alive. He tried for sarcasm, but it fell flat. The situation was too grim. Our Cathar? Not. She considered this. Our energy is regulated. Internal states manifest externally. Her scales rippled, a brief flash of emerald green chasing across her shoulders. We draw from environmental sources when available. When depleted, she trailed off, her gaze becoming distant. Warmth is assimilated. Okay, that sounded ominous. Assimilated how? Proximity, resonance, exchange. Her eyes flicked back to him, holding his gaze. There was an intensity there, a flicker of something primal beneath the calm surface that made the hairs on his neck prickle. You are a potent source. Kai shifted uncomfortably. He was used to fending off aggressive docking masters and shady info brokers, not being eyed like a walking furnace by an alien who spoke of assimilating warmth. He needed to keep his distance, but the ruin was small, the jungle hostile, and she was undeniably captivating. The way light played across her scales, the fluid grace of her movements, even the faint, cool, static charge that seemed to hover around her. He found his eyes drawn to her more often than he liked. Later, while Kai was trying to rig a proximity AI Alarm near the entrance using salvaged sensors, Lyra approached him silently from behind. He nearly jumped out of his skin when her cool fingers brushed his arm as she reached for a wire he was fumbling with. "Allow me," she murmured. Her touch, even through his jacket sleeve, sent a jolt up his arm like licking a power cell. He snatched his hand back. "I got it!" "Your fine motor control is degrading," she stated, ignoring his reaction. Her fingers moved with impossible dexterity, connecting the sensor leads with precise touches. Her touchpads glowed softly with each connection. "Likely low blood glucose or fatigue," he scowled. "I'm fine." But he wasn't. He was tired, hungry, and increasingly flustered by her presence. She finished the connection and straightened up, her shoulder brushing his as she turned. Her scales were now a shimmering bronze catching the firelight. "This perimeter system is rudimentary, sufficient only for ground-level intrusion. It's better than nothing." He stepped back, putting more space between them. "Thanks, I guess." She tilted her head, those dark eyes seeming to see right through his attempt at nonchalance. A slow smile revealing surprisingly human-like teeth touched her lips. "You radiate C." Conflict. Internal frequencies mismatched. Her tendrils twitched, leaning slightly towards him. "Is proximity to me the source? Maybe I just don't like being analyzed like a faulty engine," he retorted, turning away to check the fire. He could feel her gaze on his back. "Denial," she murmured, the sound soft but carrying easily in the enclosed space. Another fascinating human trait. He gritted his teeth. This was going to be a long stay in the creepy alien ruins. And keeping his distance from the fascinating, frustrating, warmth-seeking alien was proving harder than surviving the jungle. Days bled into a cycle of damp chill, foraging, and jumpy vigilance. Kai learned Lyra was unnervingly good at navigating the jungle, sensing hidden water sources, edible fungi after careful analysis with her touchpads, and most importantly, approaching predators long before he heard or saw anything. She moved like a whisper, her iridescent scales a shifting camouflage against the alien flora. He learned her glow wasn't just random. Deep blues and violets meant calm or concentration. Yellows and greens indicated alertness or curiosity. Reds and oranges flared with aggression or alarm. And a soft, pulsating silver seemed linked to something else, something he felt whenever she got too close, a strange hum under his skin. Their interactions remained a tense dance of proximity and withdrawal. Lyra seemed utterly unbothered by human notions of personal space, often settling near him, her cool presence a constant awareness at the edge of his senses. She'd accidentally brush against him, reaching for something, her fingers lingering a fraction too long. She'd watch him with that unnervingly direct gaze, head tilted as if trying to decipher his internal workings. Kai, meanwhile, built thicker walls. He deflected her analytical comments with sarcasm, retreated into moody silence, and pointedly moved away whenever she encroached. But it was like trying to hold back the tide. The ruin, their shared confinement, forced them together. One evening, huddled by the flickering plasma fire while a torrential, acidic rain lashed down outside, Lyra presented him with a smooth, obsidian-like shard she'd found deeper in the ruins. "Resonant frequency storage," she explained, holding it out. "Contains faint Cathar biosignatures, kin markers." Kai hesitated, then took it. The stone was cool, almost glassy. "Your people were here? Long ago? An outpost? Before the scourge?" Her voice was low, the usual melodic hum subdued. "Scourge?" She looked away, her scales shifting to a muted gray. "Oblivion, consuming cold." She wouldn't elaborate further. "A rare glimpse of vulnerability?" He handed the shard back, their fingers brushing, that familiar jolt stronger this time. Lyra's gaze snapped to his, her eyes widening almost imperceptibly. Her glow pulsed, a sudden flash of silver under the gray. She snatched her hand back as if burned, though her skin remained cool to his touch. "Apologies," she murmured, turning away quickly, her tail lashing once. Kai stared at his own hand, the phantom tingle lingering. What the hell was that? Later, trying to sleep on his thin roll mat across the chamber from her usual spot, he found himself restless. The rain drummed incessantly, the fire was low. He could just make out Lyra's silhouette, unnaturally still in the shadow. Was she even sleeping? Did Cathar sleep? He closed his eyes, trying to force exhaustion, but the image of her reaction, that flash of silver, kept replaying. It wasn't analytical curiosity. It wasn't predatory assessment. It felt different, personal. He finally drifted into an uneasy doze, only to be jolted awake hours later by a different sound. A low, guttural growl closer than the rain. Adrenaline surged. He grabbed his pulse pistol, heart hammering. The proximity alarm he'd rigged wasn't going off. Whatever it wasn't ground level. He scanned the cracked ceiling, weapon raised. Lyra was already moving, a blur of shadows detaching from the wall. Her scales were shifting rapidly, mimicking the dark, moss-streaked stone. A near-perfect camouflage. Her eyes glowed faintly red. She pointed upwards with one sharp gesture. High up, near a fissure in the roof, two pairs of multifaceted eyes gleamed down at them. Some kind of arboreal predator. Big. Kai fired a warning shot near the opening. The creature hissed, a spray of viscous fluid splattering near the fire, making it sizzle and dim. Lyra moved instantly, launching herself upwards with astonishing agility, using irregularities in the stone wall like handholds. She was a scaled shadow ascending into the darkness. Kai could only watch, useless from the ground. He heard a scuffling sound, a sharp alien cry from Lyra, then a heavy thud outside the ruined entrance. Silence. "Lyra?" he called out, voice tight. A moment later, she dropped lightly back to the floor, landing silently beside him. Her camouflage faded, reveal eye. Scales flushed crimson and orange. There was a shallow gash on her arm, oozing a translucent, faintly glowing fluid instead of blood. "Threat neutralized," she stated, her breathing slightly faster than usual. Two of them, distracted by the thermal signature of the fire. He reached towards her injured arm instinctively. "Are you okay?" She flinched back from his touch, her eyes wary. "Damage is minimal, self-repair protocols initiated." But her glow was still flickering erratically. She wouldn't meet his eyes. The earlier incident with the shard, the shared danger, her unexpected flinch, it cracked something in Kai's carefully constructed defenses. He stepped closer, ignoring her guarded posture. "Let me see." He gently took her arm before she could pull away again. The gash was already sealing, the edges knitting together with faint blue sparks. But her skin felt colder than usual, and a tremor ran through her arm. He looked up, meeting her wide, dark eyes. The analytical coolness was gone, replaced by something raw, vulnerable, and beneath that, unmistakable heat. Desire. Mirrored, he realized with a jolt, in himself. The air crackled, the rain outside faded to white noise. It was just them, the flickering firelight, the sudden, suffocating tension. The moment stretched, thick and volatile. Kai's fingers tightened slightly on Lyra's arm, the smooth, cool scales unexpectedly sensitive beneath his touch. Her internal glow pulsed faster, shifting from the residual crimson of battle readiness to that strange, intense silver he'd seen before, washing over her collarbone and shoulders like liquid moonlight. Her tendrils, usually twitching with observation, curled tightly against her temple. Her breathing was shallow, audible now. He could feel the fine tremor running through her, a vulnerability that belied the warrior who had just dispatched two predators. His own heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic counterpoint to her steady internal pulse. The careful distance he'd maintained, the sarcastic walls he'd built, they crumbled under the weight of that shared look, the undeniable current arcing between them. He saw past the alienness, past the analytical pronouncements and unnerving stillness, to the being beneath. Fierce, strangely innocent, and radiating a loneliness that resonated with his own guarded core. He wanted to pull her closer, to chase away that unnatural chill, to feel the spark of her touch without flinching. He wanted to understand the silver glow, the resonant hum, the conflict he saw warring in her dark eyes. Lyra's gaze dropped to his mouth, then flickered back up to his eyes. A decision seemed to form there, sharp and sudden. Before Kai could process it, she leaned in, bridging the small gap between them, her cool lips pressed against his, tentative at first, then surprisingly firm. It wasn't like any kiss he'd ever experienced. It was cold, yes, but charged with that biostatic energy, sending shockwaves through his system. Her mouth was soft, yielding, yet there was an underlying intensity, a primal curiosity in the way she explored the contact. He froze for a split second, stunned, then instinct took over. He responded, his hand sliding from her arm to the curve of her waist, pulling her closer. Her body was lithe and strong, the scales smooth and cool against his palm, even through her internal heat, which seemed to flare wherever he touched. The kiss deepened, becoming less tentative, more demanding. Her other hand came up, fingers tangling in the hair at the nape of his neck, her touch sending shivers down his spine despite the coolness of her skin. He could feel the thrumming pulse inside her quicken, synchronizing with his own frantic heartbeat. It was overwhelming, confusing, intoxicating, a chaotic mix of alien sensation and deeply human response. The air around them seemed to crackle, her silver glow intensifying, bathing them both in ethereal light. He tasted ozone, rain, and something uniquely Lyra, something wild and untranslatable. Just as the kiss reached a fever pitch, a crescendo of clashing energies, she pulled back abruptly. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated, the silver glow flickering violently, threatening to short-circuit. She touched her own lips, her expression bewildered, almost scared. "Resonance overload," she gasped, her voice strained, the melodic hum fractured. She stumbled back a step, putting distance between them, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Kai stood frozen, breathing hard, his lips tingling, his mind reeling. The sudden absence of her contact left him feeling strangely bereft, colder than before. The intensity of the connection, the raw energy exchanged, had shaken them both. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was something deeper, more elemental, and frankly, terrifying. Lyra wouldn't look at him. She turned towards the darkest corner of the ruin, her scales shifting rapidly through agitated patterns of gray and fractured silt. Sufficient data," she muttered, more to herself than to him. Emotional frequency, anomalous. Kai ran a hand through his hair, trying to get his own breathing under control. "Lyra." She flinched at her name, wrapping her arms around herself, a startlingly human gesture of self-protection. "Maintain distance," she said, her voice tight, strained. Recalibration required. He wanted to argue, to go to her, to understand what had just happened between them, but the raw panic in her voice, the way her glow sputtered like a dying star, stopped him. This wasn't a game, wasn't teasing. This was real, powerful, and clearly pushed her past some kind of limit. He retreated to the fire, adding more fuel, needing the mundane task. The air remained thick with unspoken tension, charged with the memory of the kiss. The echo of that overwhelming resonance. They had crossed a line, and neither of them knew where it led, only that it was somewhere potent and dangerous. Sleep was impossible now. They existed in separate corners of the ruin, aware of every shift, every breath, the charged space between them humming with frustrated energy and unanswered questions. The partial payoff had only amplified the need, leaving them both raw and exposed. Set in the damp, alien darkness, the aftermath of the kiss hung heavy in the air for days. An awkward truce settled over them, thick with unspoken words and stolen glances. Lyra kept her distance, her movements precise, economical, her glow usually a subdued neutral blue-violet. She focused intently on foraging, mapping the ruins, and observing the jungle's rhythms, avoiding Kai's eyes. He mirrored her avoidance, busying himself with reinforcing the shelter, trying to coax life back into the secondary beacon with salvaged power cells, anything to keep his hands and mind occupied. But the memory of the kiss, the jolt of her touch, the overwhelming silver resonance lingered persistently. It was a phantom warmth against his lips, a static hum beneath his skin. The forced proximity that had once been merely awkward was now excruciating. Every accidental brush of shoulders, every shared glance across the flickering fire sent sparks skittering along his nerves. He found himself watching her more, noticing the subtle shifts in her glow that betrayed emotions she tried to mask. A flicker of yellow-green curiosity when he managed to repair a small water filter. A brief flash of crimson annoyance when a pack of chittering, rodent-like creatures raided their meager fungi stash. He saw the way her tendrils sometimes twitched slightly in his direction before she caught herself. The tension was a coiled spring, ready to snap. It finally broke during another torrential downpour. They were trapped inside the ruins, the drumming rain amplifying the claustrophobia. Lyra was shivering more noticeably than usual, flickering weakly like a faulty light panel. Her scales had taken on a dull grayish tint. Kai watched her for a long moment, his internal struggle warring, the instinct to keep his distance versus the undeniable pull to bridge the gap. the basic human impulse to offer comfort. He remembered her words. Warmth is assimilated. Proximity, resonance. He remembered her inside his sleeping bag, seeking heat. He remembered her inside his arm after the fight. He made a decision. Crossing the chamber, he sat down near her, not touching, but close enough to share the minimal warmth radiating from his body. She stiffened, her head snapping up, eyes wide and wary. Kai, her voice was barely a whisper, faint and thin. It's okay, he said softly. You're freezing. He shrugged off his heavier outer jacket. Here, he hesitated. Ed then gently draped it over her shoulders. She flinched at the initial contact, but didn't pull away. The material seemed to swallow her lean frame. She looked small, vulnerable, stripped of her usual alien confidence. She stared down at the jacket, then slowly lifted her gaze to his. The analytical distance was gone, replaced by a raw need that mirrored the chill radiating from her skin. Your thermal signature. It helps, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. The cold weakens the internal matrix. Matrix? Bioenergetic field sustains us. She drew the jacket tighter around herself. Mine is depleted. The escape, the crash. He understood then. Her need for warmth wasn't just comfort, it was survival. And her coldness wasn't just physiology, it was a sign of fading energy, of vulnerability. His carefully constructed walls didn't just crumble, they evaporated. He moved closer, slowly, cautiously, giving her time to retreat. She watched him, her dark eyes luminous in the dim light, but she didn't move away. He sat beside her, their shoulders brushing. The familiar, cool shock of her skin against his was there, but muted, overlaid now with the fine tremor running through her. He hesitantly lifted his arm, offering a lent invitation. After a long moment, she leaned into him, resting her head tentatively against his shoulder, her cool cheek pressed against the fabric of his shirt. He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her gently against his side. Her body was tense at first, then slowly, gradually began to relax into his warmth. Her shivering lessened. A faint, soft blue glow began to pulse beneath her scales, weak but steady. He could feel the rhythmic thrum of her internal energy field against his ribs, slow and fragile. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sounds the drumming rain and their shared breathing. It wasn't explosive like the kiss, but it was profoundly intimate, a quiet surrender. He felt the guarded layers peeling away from himself, the cynicism, the ingrained solitude. Holding her like this, right, necessary. Why didn't you say, he murmured into the cool silk of her hair, inhaling her faint, ozone-like scent. Why didn't you just tell me you needed help? She tilted her head back slightly, looking up at him. Her eyes were soft, unguarded. To show weakness is to invite predation, she whispered. Among my people and others, she paused. And the resonance. With you, it is overwhelming, uncharted. We met age. Her gaze, understanding, dawning. The kiss hadn't just been intense for him. It had overloaded her senses, her very energy field. Their connection was potent, volatile, dangerous maybe, but undeniable. He lowered his head, his lips finding hers again. This time, there was no shock, no overload. It was soft, searching, a silent question asked and answered. Her lips were still cool, but they warmed beneath his, parting slightly. Her hand came up, not to tangle in his hair, but to rest gently against his cheek, her touchpad sending a soft, warm pulse against his skin. The blue glow emanating from her brightened, shifting towards silver, but controlled this time, warm and inviting. He deepened the kiss, pulling her fully into his lap, cradling her against his chest, sharing his heat, his energy. She responded eagerly, her earlier hesitation gone, replaced by a yielding softness, a deep, resonant hum vibrating from her chest into his. The rain outside became a distant symphony. The cold ruin faded away. There was only the shared warmth, the electric touch, the steady silver glow illuminating their faces as they explored this uncharted territory together, finally surrendering to the current that had pulled them together from the moment. She'd crawled into his sleeping bag seeking warmth. The kiss deepened, slow and deliberate, a stark contrast to their earlier frantic collision. Kai held Lyra close, marveling at the sensation of her cool, scaled skin against his warmer flesh, where his hand slipped beneath the jacket he'd given her, tracing the elegant lines of her back. Her silver glow pulsed softly, bathing them in an ethereal light, casting dancing shadows on the ancient stone walls. Her touchpads, pressed against his jawline, radiated a gentle warmth now, a counterpoint to the inherent coolness of her body. It was a fascinating paradox, this blend of temperatures, textures, energies. She made a soft sound deep in her throat, a resonant hum that vibrated through him, settling somewhere deep in his chest. It wasn't just sound, it felt like communication, an expression of pleasure, of connection, bypassing words. He shifted, lifting her slightly so she straddled his lap, facing him, her legs wrapped around his waist, her tail curling lightly around his thigh for balance. The intimacy of the position sent a fresh wave of heat through him. Her dark eyes searched his, questioning, vulnerable. He met her gaze, offering reassurance, letting her see the raw desire, mixed with a tenderness that surprised even him. He ran a hand along her flank, the scales incredibly smooth, almost frictionless, yet yielding slightly under pressure. Her glow intensified where he touched, leaving faint, lingering trails of silver light. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his, her tendrils brushing softly against his temples. "Kai," she breathed, her voice thick with the resonant hum. It wasn't a question, but an acknowledgement, a connection forged. He tilted his head, capturing her lips again, kissing her with growing urgency. Her response was immediate, matching his intensity. Her hands explored his shoulders, his chest, learning the unfamiliar landscape of his human form with curious, sensitive fingers. He fumbled with the fastenings of his own shirt, needing to feel her against him, skin to skin, or skin to scale, as it were. The cool, smooth expanse of her torso pressed against his chest was a shock, electric and grounding all at once. Her internal pulse thrummed against him, a steady beat in the charged silence. She gasped softly as his hand cupped the side of her breast, her skin unexpectedly soft beneath the fine scales. Her silver glow flared, washing over them in a bright wave. He explored her body with reverence and burgeoning passion, mapping the sleek contours, the subtle ridges of her spine, the elegant curve of her hips. Everything about her was alien, yet utterly captivatingly feminine. She responded with equal curiosity, her cool fingers tracing the muscles of his arms, the line of his collarbone, her touch sending shivers of pleasure across his skin. There was an innocence to her exploration, mixed with an undercurrent of something ancient, primal. When his fingers brushed the juncture of her thighs, she stiffened for a moment, her glow flickering, then relaxed, tilting her hips slightly, a silent invitation. He hesitated, unsure of her anatomy, her boundaries. She seemed to sense his uncertainty, guiding his hand gently, her touchpads warm against his knuckles. Her internal heat was concentrated there, a surprising core of warmth amidst her cool exterior. She moaned softly, a low, resonant sound arching against his touch, the silver light emanating from her pulsed in time with her quickening breaths. Need, sharp and undeniable, surged through Kai. He wanted all of her, this strange, beautiful, resilient creature who had crashed into his life and overturned everything he thought he knew about connection, about himself. He eased her back slightly, his own arousal pressing against her. Her eyes widened, dark pools reflecting the silver light, filled with anticipation and trust. He met her gaze, a silent promise passing between them. Slowly, carefully, he guided himself towards her heat. Her body yielded, accepting him with a soft gasp, a tremor running through her frame. The sensation was indescribable, tight, cool, yet radiating that inner warmth, slick and welcoming. Her scales seemed to shimmer against his skin, creating a friction that was both alien and intensely pleasurable. She clung to him, her fingers digging lightly into his shoulders, her head thrown back, revealing the long, elegant line of her throat where her pulse beat visibly, glowing silver. He began to move, slowly at first, finding a rhythm. It was unlike anything he'd ever known, the contrast of temperatures, the smooth glide of her skin, the resonant hum vibrating through her body into his. It was overwhelming, sensory overload in the best possible way. Lyra matched his rhythm, her hips moving with an innate grace, her eyes closed, lost in the sensation. Her glow intensified with each thrust, pulsing brighter, washing the small chamber in brilliant silver. Like eye, Synchronizing with the building pressure in his own body, he felt their energies intertwining, his human warmth merging with her Cathar resonance, creating something new, something powerful. He drove into her faster, deeper, chasing the peak, pulling her impossibly closer. She cried out, a high melodic sound that shivered through the air, her body arching, convulsing around him. Her silver glow exploded, blindingly bright, consuming them both in pure light and sensation. The wave crashed over Kai an instant later, a raw release that tore a groan from his throat, emptying him, grounding him, binding him to her in that luminous moment. Aftershocks trembled through them both. Lyra collapsed against Kai's chest, her breathing ragged, her glow slowly softening from blinding silver to a warm, contented lavender hue. Her skin felt less cool now, almost warm where it pressed against his. He held her tightly, his own heart gradually slowing from its frantic pace, listening to the soft, rhythmic thrum of her internal pulse against his ear. The rain outside had softened to a gentle patter, a soothing counterpoint to the intimacy enveloping them within the ancient stone walls. He stroked her back, the scales smooth and familiar now beneath his palm. She stirred, lifting her head slightly, her dark eyes soft, luminous. A faint smile touched her lips. The resonance, she murmured, her voice husky, the hum deeper, more resonant than before. It did not overload. No, he whispered back, tracing the line of her jaw with his thumb. It felt right. She leaned into his touch, nuzzling her cheek against his shoulder. Her tendrils, usually alert or analytical, curled softly against his neck, a gesture of unguarded affection. They remained entwined for a long time, drifting in the peaceful aftermath, the connection between them solidifying, moving beyond the purely physical into something deeper, more emotionally resonant. He felt stripped bare, his usual defenses non-existent, but instead of feeling vulnerable, he felt anchored to her. Eventually, practicalities intruded. The fire was dying, casting long, flickering shadows. The chill of the ruin began to seep back into the air. Reluctantly, Kai eased Lyra off his lap, helping her adjust the jacket around her shoulders again. She watched him as he added fuel to the plasma fire, the lavender glow pulsing softly around her. There was a new ease between them, a comfortable silence replacing the previous ward tension. Kai, Lyra said softly, breaking the silence. He turned back to her. My people, we bond through resonance, shared energy, touch. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him, her expression earnest. What occurred between us, it signifies a deep connection, a potential pairing. Pairing, the word hung in the air. Not just sex, not just survival necessity, something more permanent, more fundamental to her understanding of the universe. Kai's old instincts, the ones that screamed, run, at the first sign of commitment, stirred faintly. But looking at Lyra, at the open trust in her eyes, the soft lavender glow that seemed to echo his own internal warmth, the fear felt distant, irrelevant. He had crash-landed on a hostile world, lost his ship, faced predators and starvation, but finding her, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like a beginning. He crossed back to her, kneeling before her, taking her cool hands in his. Her touchpads pulsed, faintly warm against his palms. I don't know Cathar customs, Lyra, he said honestly. I don't know about resonance or pairings. All I know is, he hesitated, searching for the right words. Being with you like this, it feels essential. Like something I didn't know I was missing. Her smile widened, genuine and radiant. Her glow brightened, shifting towards a warm, rose-gold hue he hadn't seen before. Essential, she repeated, testing the word. Yes, that is accurate. She leaned forward, pressing a soft, cool kiss to his lips. Then we learn, she murmured against his mouth. Together. In the following days, their dynamic shifted completely. They moved as a unit, their actions synchronized, anticipating each other's needs. Lyra taught him rudimentary Cathar communication through touch, how subtle pressure conveyed meaning, how different thermal pulses indicated intent. He learned to read the nuances of her glow, the shifting colors and patterns becoming a language as clear as words. In return, Kai shared stories of human worlds, explained concepts like sarcasm, which still mostly baffled her, but she seemed amused by his attempts, and shared his dwindling rations without hesitation. He found himself becoming fiercely protective, scanning the jungle canopy not just for threats to himself, but for anything that might harm her. He saw the same fierce protectiveness mirrored in her eyes whenever danger lurked. One afternoon, while scouting near a series of deep ravines, they were ambushed, not by jungle predators this time, but by sleek, silent hunter drones. Small, fast, and armed with stun bolts, his salvage pulse pistol felt woefully inadequate. "Slavers!" Kai yelled, shoving Lara behind a rock formation. "They must have tracked your escape." Lara's eyes flashed crimson. "They hunt Kethar for our energy fields," she snarled, her voice losing all melody, becoming sharp, dangerous. Two drones zipped past, stun bolts sizzling against the rock where they'd been moments before. They were pinned down. Kai risked a shot, vaporizing one drone, but another immediately took its place, maneuvering with deadly precision. "There's too many!" Lyra grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Her glow flared, shifting to an intense electric blue. "Trust me, Kai. Resonance conduit." He didn't know what that meant, but he saw the absolute certainty in her eyes. "Okay, what do I do? Maintain contact, channel focus." She pressed her palm flat against his chest, right over his heart. Her touch was icy cold, then blazingly hot, a wave of pure energy flooding through him, stealing his breath. The energy surge was staggering. Kai felt Lyra's Kethar resonance flood him, not overwhelming like before, but directed, focused. It wasn't just her energy, it felt like she was drawing on his warmth, his bioelectricity, amplifying it through her own internal matrix. His vision swam for a second, the jungle around them seeming to pulse in time with the throbbing energy centered on Lyra's hand against his chest. Hunter drones zipped through the air, triangulating their position behind the rock formation. Stun bolts ricocheted dangerously close. "Now!" Lyra commanded, her voice strained but powerful. Her entire body blazed with electric blue light, so bright Kai had to squint. The light wasn't just emanating from her, it seemed to be drawing light, energy, from the air around them, from the very ground, and channeling it through the contact point on his chest. He felt like a conduit, a living battery. Lyra raised her free hand, palm outward towards the attacking drones. The air crackled. The blue energy focused, coalescing into a blinding point of light on her palm. With a sharp cry, she unleashed it. A wave of pure sonic force, laced with bioelectric energy, erupted outwards. It wasn't an explosion, but a concussive pulse that hit the drones simultaneously. They jerked erratically, internal systems shorting out with visible sparks, then plummeted lifelessly into the raft. Below, silence fell, broken only by the distant jungle sounds and their own harsh breathing. The intense blue light faded from Lyra, leaving her glow a dim, flickering gray. She swayed, her hand falling from Kai's chest. He caught her before she could collapse, pulling her against him. She was ice cold, colder than he'd ever felt her, and trembling violently. The energy expenditure had drained her completely. "Lyra, are you all right?" He held her tight, trying to funnel his own warmth into her. "Depleted," she managed, her voice faint. "System rebooting." Her eyes fluttered closed. Panic seized Kai. He half carried, half dragged her deeper into the cover of the ravine's overhang, scanning the skies frantically for more drones. Nothing. They were safe. For now. He settled her gently on the ground, stripping off his jacket and wrapping it around her again, then pulling her close against his body, sharing his heat just as he had before in the ruin. Her shivering was intense, racking her slender frame. "Stay with me," he murmured, rubbing her arms, her back, trying to stimulate circulation, trying to offer some of his own energy back to her. "Come on, Lyra, fight it." Slowly, agonizingly slowly, a faint flicker of blue returned to her glow, stabilizing into a weak but steady pulse. The shivering began to subside. Her eyes opened, finding his. "The conduit worked," she whispered. "Your energy amplified mine." "You nearly killed yourself," he said, his voice rough with relief and fear. "Don't ever do that again." She managed a weak smile. "Threat neutralized. Acceptable risk." He shook his head, holding her tighter. "No, not acceptable, not if it costs you." He looked into her dark eyes, the shared danger, the reliance on each other, cementing something profound between them. "We stick together. We protect each other. No more solo heroics, understand?" Lyra searched his face, then nodded slowly, a flicker of rose gold warming her lavender glow. Understood, Kai. We protect us. That moment solidified their bond, transforming it from attraction and survival into a conscious partnership. They were no longer just a human and a Cathar stranded together. They were Kai and Lyra, a unit forged in desperation and sealed by choice. As Lyra slowly regained her strength, resting against him, she spoke softly, revealing more about her past. She wasn't just any Cathar. She was Lyraness of the ruling ascendancy, exiled after a political coup orchestrated by Riva who sought to control the Cathar's unique energy manipulating abilities. The slavers weren't just random hunters, they were likely mercenaries hired by her political enemies to retrieve or eliminate her. Her escape had been narrow, her resources depleted even before she crashed on Xylo 7. They will not stop hunting me, she said, her voice regaining some of its usual resonance. My existence threatens their power. Then we won't let them find you, Kai stated firmly. We find a way off this rock together, and we go somewhere they'll never look. Lyra looked up at him, hope warring with ingrained Cathar pragmatism in her eyes. Such places exist? Yeah, Kai said, a small smile touching his lips. The galaxy's a big place, lots of corners to get lost in, especially if you've got a good pilot. He winked. She didn't wink back. The gesture was likely meaningless to her, but the rose gold light in her glow intensified, warming her features. I have a pilot, she agreed softly, leaning her head back against his shoulder, a gesture of complete trust. He felt a fierce surge of determination. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He had someone to protect, someone to fight for, someone whose alien warmth had somehow thawed his out and frozen heart. He would get them off this planet. Together! Their focus shifted. Survival was paramount, but now it served a larger goal: escape. They needed a power source for the secondary beacon, something potent enough to cut through Xylo 7's atmospheric interference. Lyra, drawing on her knowledge of energy signatures gleaned from the ruins, suggested the nexus point she'd felt earlier might hold residual power, or perhaps technology left behind by her ancestors. It was a long shot, deep within the most unstable section of the crumbling structures, but it was their only shot. Navigating the deeper ruins was treacherous. Floors threatened to collapse, strange energy fields warped perception, and bioluminescent fungi pulsed with unsettling life. Lyra moved with caution, her tendrils constantly twitching, sensing structural weaknesses and faint energy trails Kai couldn't perceive. He covered her, pulse pistol ready, trusting her instincts implicitly. They worked seamlessly, communicating with glances, touches, and the subtle shifts in Lyra's glow. Her hand brushing his arm meant caution. A specific pressure against his back meant danger ahead. A soft lavender pulse meant safe. His hand gripping her shoulder conveyed assurance. It was a language born of necessity and intimacy. Deep within the ruin's heart they found it. Not a device, but a massive crystal formation embedded in the wall, pulsing with a low, rhythmic hum and emitting a faint golden light. It resonated with power, ancient and immense. The Nexus Core, Lyra breathed, her scales shifting to an odd gold. Dormant, mostly, but leaking residual energy. Enough to power the beacon, Kai asked, hope surging. Lyra placed her palm against the crystal. Her glow flared brightly, synchronizing with the crystal's pulse. Yes, but tapping it directly. Risky, unstable, she turned to him, her expression serious. We would need to create a controlled conduit, similar to before but sustained. It will drain us both. He didn't hesitate. Let's do it. Rigging the beacon to the crystal was complex. Kai handled the technical interface, his fingers flying over the small console, while Lyra prepared to act as the living conduit, focusing the crystal's raw power into a usable stream for the beacon's transmitter. When everything was ready, they took their positions. Kai activated the beacon's transmission sequence, its power indicator critically low. Lyra placed one hand on the crystal, the other flat against Kai's chest, just as she had in the ravine. Ready? She asked, her eyes locking with his. Ready, he confirmed, bracing himself. Power surged, not the sharp, explosive burst from before, but a steady, overwhelming flood. The crystal blazed, Lyra became a figure of pure golden light, and Kai felt the energy pour through him, immense and almost unbearable. The beacon whined, power levels jumping instantly to maximum, broadcasting their distress signal on all emergency frequencies. It felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. Kai focused on Lyra, on the link between them, pouring his own strength, his warmth, his will into the connection, helping her channel the torrent. Her face was tight with concentration, sweat beading on her human skin while her scales shimmered, radiating intense heat now, not cold. Finally, the beacon chirped. Signal transmitted, confirmation received. Done, Kai gasped. Lyra collapsed, the connection instantly, slumping against him, the golden light fading, leaving her glow a pale, exhausted white. The crystal's hum dimmed back to its dormant state. They clung to each other, utterly drained but triumphant. Confirmation received? Lyra whispered, her voice weak. Yeah, Kai confirmed. Relief washing over him. Someone heard us, someone's coming. They rested there, leaning against the humming crystal, recovering their strength, the shared effort forging an even deeper intimacy between them. Later, huddled by their fire back in the main chamber, waiting for rescue, Lyra rested her head on Kai's shoulder, her tail curled loosely around his leg. Her glow was a soft, contented lavender mixed with streaks of rose gold. Where will we go, Kai? She asked softly. When they come? He looked down at her, at the trust in her alien eyes. Somewhere safe, he repeated his earlier promise. Somewhere you don't have to hide who you are, somewhere we can just be. He thought of the vast, uncharted territories on the Outer Rim, worlds where questions weren't asked, where a human pilot and a Cathar warrior could carve out a life. It wouldn't be easy. Her enemies might still search. His own past wasn't exactly clean, but facing it together felt possible in a way being alone never had. It might be rough, he admitted. Scavenging, maybe some creative cargo runs, staying off the grid. Lyra tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. I am adaptable. And, she added, her touchpads warming against his hand, I have... EU? He pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple, breathing in her unique scent. The coldness that had first defined her presence was gone, replaced by a warmth that radiated from within her, a warmth mirrored in his own chest. The sound of a ship descending through the atmosphere broke the jungle's quiet rhythm. Rescue! Or trouble! They stood up, Kai drawing his pistol, Lyra's glow shifting to an alert yellow-green. They faced the entrance together, side by side, ready for whatever came next. A ramp lowered from the unseen vessel, light spilling out. Figures emerged. Not slavers, not military. Rough-looking spacers, heavily armed but not aggressive. One stepped forward, a grizzled woman with cybernetic eyes. Received a coded Cathar distress signal tied to an old smuggler's frequency, she called out, her voice amplified. Name's Rex. Heard you folks need a ride? Kai glanced at Lyra. Her glow softened slightly. A chance, he holstered his pistol. Depends, he called back. Where you headed? Rex grinned. Somewhere far from here. Got room for two, long as you don't mind cramped quarters and questionable company. Kai looked at Lyra again, a silent question. She gave a silent nod, her hand finding his, her cool, angers lacing through his warm ones. A perfect fit. Sounds like just our kind of trip, Kai replied, squeezing her hand. Together, they walked out of the ancient ruins, leaving the damp chill of Xylo 7 behind, stepping into the light of the ramp, towards an uncertain future, but one they would face side by side. The warmth between their joined hands felt more real, more essential than anything else in the galaxy.